Go.
Right. So yesterday's video, I was talking about the time between childhood up until I got pregnant with Mercy, and some of the job issues and how I had to trust the Lord for provision during that time, and He provided. And so um, the Mercy's pregnancy was interesting. I told you I was in the hospital for the beginning of it because I was super sick, and there were a couple things that were going on during the pregnancy that were probably indicators of something else going on, but I didn't know that at the time. I had the really severe nausea, lasted most of my pregnancy, um, and I was able to get a job short term and help close the store that I'd been a manager of before I worked at the company that I was working at when I got pregnant. And so yeah, so that turned out well in that regard. But I also dealt with these super, super, super horrid headaches through the whole pregnancy, and they were giving me like the strongest doses of medication that they could give somebody who was pregnant, and it didn't always help, but I could function. So yeah, sometimes it made me more nauseous, so I wasn't always willing to take that. But you know, you're limited in what you can take when you're pregnant anyway. But Mercy was born. Everything was fine there. She was a great kid. She had a boatload of allergies as a baby, and she has outgrown them. But we won't talk about that. We won't talk about my opinion on whether you outgrow allergies or not. But when she was a year and a half old, I guess, yeah, I had been working for a law firm in High Point for about I had gotten the job when she was 8 months old. And so about a year later, I had started getting, I've always had headaches. It's not really that big of a deal for me to have a headache, you know, sinus headache and allergies and whatever, or stress headache or whatever. But I got a weird headache that just didn't go away, and it lasted for like 3 weeks and just got so much worse. I felt like my head was going to explode. So I don't go to the doctor for anything. I'm just not like a doctor kind of person. And I have to go more often now, which you'll find all that stuff out. But so when I went to the doctor, I went to urgent care, which was like right down the road from the office that I was working at, and I told them that I was having migraines. So they gave me migraine medicine, and they said if this doesn't work, come back. We'll just schedule an appointment for 2 weeks to see you again and see how things are going. Well, I tried the medicine for like a week and a half, and ended up going back in because I had other things that started happening. I started to have like black spots in my vision, and when people would talk to me, it would sound like I was underwater, like in this really, everything was kind of muffled and weird sounding. And then there would be times where people would say something and I didn't understand what they were saying. I could repeat it back word for word, but I didn't comprehend it. So there was clearly something else going on. So when I went back to the doctor after the week and a half or so of taking the migraine medicine, I told him, you know, something else is definitely going on. It's not just migraines unless this is side effects of the medicine. And the doctor that I saw, he was really kind, but he said, I think this is stress. You're working for a law firm. You are clearly really busy. And so he gave me this little written test, and I answered everything, and he proved to me that I was under a lot of stress. But I was thinking, you know, I don't go to the doctor for anything, and if I'm going, this is a big deal. And I know he doesn't know that, but I knew that something major was going on. So I really pressed him, and so he said that he would send me to an ophthalmologist. Well, obviously I've been seeing ophthalmologists my entire life because I had eye surgery when I was 5. I had to go to Duke Medical Center, Duke Eye Center, like up until I was a teenager, for regular checkups for what was going on with my eyes when I was a kid. So yeah, I knew I'd been to my ophthalmologist regularly, and that was not the issue. So he reluctantly scheduled me for a CT scan. He said, for your peace of mind, I'm going to send you for a CT scan, but I'm sure everything's clean. So that was like early in the week, maybe like a Monday or Tuesday, and then my CT scan was scheduled for Friday. So I went in and had the scan, and then I got a call when I went back to work on Monday from the doctor. It was probably like 10:30 or so in the morning, and he said, I have your results from your CT scan, and you've already told me you don't like going to the doctor and that you don't, this is not something that you would normally do. So just to make sure you do come in, you have a brain tumor, and I need to see you in my office right away. So I am the kind of person who kind of, maybe I'm a little emotionally retarded in some ways, not using the word retarded in a bad way, but just I'm a little slow emotionally a lot of times. And actually I've been praying about that this year, which is why Sunday was really funny that I got so emotional in 2 different videos that day, because that's not how I normally react to things. But anyway, so he said that you have a brain tumor and I need to see you in as soon as possible. If you can be here right away, that'd be great. And so I was working on interrogatory responses for the attorney I worked for, and I said, well, I'm actually in the middle of something. Is there any way that I could just come in on my lunch break? And the doctor was like silent, surprised. And so he said, yeah, what time do you go to lunch? And I said, usually around noon. So whenever I got off the phone with him, I finished typing all the responses to the interrogatories, and then it hit me. I'm a single mom and I have a brain tumor, and I don't know what that means, but I became a wreck then. That was when it was okay. I was done doing what I needed to do. Now I can get emotional. So I went to my boss, and of course I'm crying, and told her that I needed to leave and go to the doctor's office down the road. And so I got there, but when I got there, they said that he'd already gone to lunch because he was trying to go to lunch early so he'd be there for my lunch break. So I'm sitting in the lobby, and I'm kind of like bawling my eyes out and just stressed and nervous, and of course have this monstrous headache still. And I'm praying because my relationship with the Lord had grown a lot, but I was thinking, I don't understand this, Lord. I've turned my life around. I'm not living for myself. I'm trying to do what I can for myself and for Mercy, and I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And so I'm just going, what are you doing here? What are you doing here, Lord? And so he answered in a really weird way. I picked up a magazine because everybody's staring at me, and I'm trying to hide behind the magazine. I'm in the waiting room of this little urgent care place in High Point, and I opened up the magazine, and this giant 2-page spread, I guess it was like the front of an article, the first 2 pages of an article, said second chances across the top of the page. And God just really put it on my heart that this was not going to be an ending for me, and that regardless of what the doctor was going to say, this was another chance for me to just continue and allow His glory to be known through this situation. And so I felt peace immediately. As soon as I saw that and it registered, I was like, okay, I'm not stressed over this. Clearly this is not the end, and whatever happens, you've got it. And so I was not emotional anymore. I just had, like I said, this weird peace. So the doctor finally comes in. I had to wait in the waiting room like 45 minutes to an hour before he finally got back, and they called me back. And he's telling me about this tumor. It's called a meningioma. It's on the lining of your brain, but it affects your brain by basically it smushes it to the point where the brain tissue will die, and so you start losing functions and things like that. And it's kind of suffocating your brain. So he said it's extremely large and it needs surgery as soon as possible. There are a lot of risks with this, but there are some great doctors around, and he'd already called Duke, Wake Forest, and UNC, and the only hospital that was an option for me was Duke because of my insurance, and the people at UNC said they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole because of the location. They had no desire to be near it. So, but he's telling me all this, and he's really going through all of the details, and he kind of has this funny look on his face, and he finally stops and says, okay, I'm really sorry, but I have to ask you a question, and it's a personal question, but he's like, are you a Christian? And I kind of smiled, and I was like, yeah, I know Jesus. And he said, okay, because I've never seen anybody handle anything like this, and you can just see Jesus all over you. And so it was just a testament as to, how God had spoken to me in the waiting room, and how he gave me such peace in that moment that even the doctor picked up on it. And it turns out the doctor was a believer, and it was a really neat thing to kind of walk through that with him. But anyway, I went to Duke and met with my neurosurgeon and had surgery about a month and a half later. And the surgery took somewhere between 13 and 15 hours. I was under anesthesia for about 15 hours, and it was a huge, huge surgery. The doctor told me the day before I went in that he said, I do surgeries every day, and usually I do 6 to 7 every day, but tomorrow I'll be doing one, yours. And he said, it's very risky. There's a likelihood that you're going to lose either vision or hearing or speech or all three, but we're going to do our best not to do that. You'll probably have to have occupational therapy or speech therapy afterwards, and there's, of course, a high risk of death and all these kind of things they have to go through. And I'm just kind of nodding along to all of that. And I remember the next morning before I went into surgery, I just had so much peace that, I mean, even some people who came in to pray with me from my church were just kind of, they were talking about how much it was just a weird experience for them. Like they were being ministered to instead of ministering to me. And I don't, that's not because of me. That was because of what the Lord was doing. But during that time period between the diagnosis and the surgery, it was hard because I was in constant pain. I mean, imagine something else being inside your head and squishing things to death. And some people I know that feeling. There was a verse in Psalm 139 that spoke to me, and I honestly read this chapter over and over and over again every day as much as I could. Now my vision was in and out. There were times when I had no vision. There were times when my vision was fine, and then other times things would be really bizarre. I would see things that weren't there, or things would be messed up as far as like what color things were. People would be green or purple, and the sky would look a funky color, and it was just a frightening thing, but I still had the peace in my heart. And one of the verses in Psalm 139 says, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book was written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. So he knows the number of our days. He knew that before he ever put us together. And I think that gave me so much peace, just knowing that if this was my time to go, then it would be my time to go. And I remember telling people, I'm not concerned about the surgery, because if I die, I'm with him in heaven. And if I'm here, I won't be in this pain anymore. And so for me, it's sort of a win-win situation. I don't have anything to be worried about. So, like I said, the surgery was super long. And when I came out of it, I did lose vision in my left eye. A couple other things. I had hearing issues for a little while, and I had to go through some things to deal with losing vision and losing partial hearing for a little while. I did get the hearing back. I still don't have vision in my left eye except for a smidge peripheral vision, and I have fun dents in my head and a dent in my cheek and a bald patch here and a scar that runs from here to here. So of course that adds to the whole image issue that I've had since I was a kid. But what he's telling me now and what he's teaching me now, and has taught me before in the past but I've forgotten, and he's just reminding me that these things that I carry on my face, like this giant dip here, and the fact that this eye is not shaped like this eye, and that it's kind of had an impact on everything, he did that, and I can use it for his glory to be able to tell the story of what he's done. So that's kind of just what I wanted to share tonight. That's not the end of the story, but I'll tell some more tomorrow. All right, good night, everybody.